Good evening, everybody. My name is Colin Livingston. Welcome to the resurrection of Talk and Torque. It's been a little while since had the time to be able to sit down here. Glad we've got everyone starting to join us. This is an episode that, in my head, I've been psyching myself out for and trying to prep, and very fortunate to have the voice of the Rotax Grand Finals, and many other series join us here tonight. All around good guy, Mr. Henry Beaudette. For people who don't know, we're going to jump into Henry's story here. How we got in, what is it about racing, all the typical stuff. But in the world of racing, I've met a number of people, drivers, crew, parents, sponsors, mechanics, and a handful of broadcasters. But right from the very beginning, Henry was one of those guys that he just kind of hit me in the right spot right from the beginning when we had met at the Florida event last year, and he made a couple of smart comments. I was way out of my league, and and it showed at the first race. And when I got back to the paddock and I started looking at my phone and people were talking about some of his comments, knew I had a pretty kindred spirit out there. But as always, instead of listening to me flap my yap, let's welcome our good friend, all around good guy, and voice of karting for Rotax, the Rotax Grand Finals, and multiple other series, Mr. Henry Beaudette. How are you doing, Henry?
Thank you very much. I'm doing okay. All the better, to seeing you, my friend. It's great to be invited onto the show, and thank you for those kind words. I do my best.
I was surprised you said yes so quickly. For people who don't know, we're catching you. You're at home right now, so you're in the UK.
Yeah, I'm in Wales. Home from home. It's 11 p.m. at night.
My
But I'm in
goodness.
a good mood because Wales have just beaten Finland in the soccer, and they'll go through to a playoff against Poland on Tuesday to go to the Euros. But that's the sport that you only have one ball for. But we're going to be talking about a sport you definitely need two.
That's a fact. That's a fact. Somehow that football result slipped right past me. I didn't know about that, so I
Well,
appreciate
you
you
guys
bringing
got a
me.
big game against the Sabres tonight, have you not? Or soon? Is it the Oilers versus the Sabres soon?
I actually don't watch hockey.
Oh, okay,
I
okay.
have no idea. I mean, and anybody watching, you're welcome to roast my ass. But no,
Well,
I mean, I was a.
hand back your Canadian card now if you don't watch hockey.
I'll tell you what. Like I watched a game 2 weeks ago after the challenge race that I did in Tucson. My in-laws, I'm divorced, but have a wonderful relationship with both my ex-wife and her parents. Spent the night with my in-laws in Phoenix. They didn't give me an option. They said, we're watching the Oilers game tonight. So I watched that. That's the only hockey I've seen. So yeah, I don't regularly watch hockey, not because I don't like it. I just don't care about it anymore. The NHL had a lockout, many years ago.
Yep.
And when hockey went away, I just found other things to do, and I just haven't gone back to it. My kids love it, but I don't, and I don't like maple. So the two things that are stereotypically Canadian: maple syrup, maple candies. The taste of maple does not appeal to me at all. Yeah, hockey. But anyway, thanks again
That's
for joining me. Want to start with the softballs, and let's go back and let's get your backstory. Now, everyone's got a story for how they got into racing. Let's hear about how you made either a series of unfortunate mistakes, or what kind of brought you into this world.
Well, so everyone talks about you get bitten by the bug, the racing bug. I'm 43, so I was born 1981, and it was 1985. My dad recorded the BBC highlights of the Detroit Grand Prix on a Sunday night, and he did this because he knew I had to be. I was mad about cars, but I was a little so and so in the mornings. and while my mum and dad were getting ready for work, they thought, sit him down in front of a VHS, watch these cars go round and round, that'll check him up for half an hour to an hour. And that was the moment where I saw a racing car, saw Formula One, and I was hooked from that point on. And since then it's been, I consumed knowledge and book and footage and race I could watch at any time. That was me. And went to a junior race school, looked at buying a car. My dad was a primary school teacher, my mum was work part time, so that was not an option. When I was 15, I got a job working as a track marshal at my local indoor karting centre in Cardiff.
Okay.
And so that was where I learned to marshal, learned to race direct, learned to host events, and things like that. Ended up when I was 18, I hosted an event for Robbie Williams, the pop star. And so I went to university and raced in the British University Karting Championship. Managed to win that. And then myself and my mate Cam, who you'll hear a little bit more about, who I work with, we decided, look, we let's go racing. So we bought a kart. That quickly turned into 2 karts, and then we realized actually we can, with a bit of sponsorship and a bit of wheeling and dealing, we ended up with 6 karts, 6 drivers running a team.
Wow.
We ran that for 6 years. I was very fortunate enough. I raced for Wales. I raced at Le Mans 24 Hours, in my kart. But during that time, I was working at my local kart circuit, Landau International Raceway in South Wales, and just helping out in the office and booking events and what have you. And one day on a Tuesday in 2005, the phone went, and I just happened to pick up the phone, and there was a lady by the name of Carolyn Hoy, who ran the BRDC Stars of Tomorrow Championship, which was there were 2 British championships at the time, and that was one of them. And she just said, "Oh, hello, we're coming to your circuit this weekend." And yes, I'm aware of this. Strange question. We don't have a commentator. Do you use a commentator at your local club events? And I said, "Well, no, we don't." And she went, "Oh, that's a shame." Goes, "Do you know anyone who could commentate?" And I just went, "I'll give it a go."
Okay.
And she went, "Really?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I'm a motorsports journalist. I was working for a website called Crash.net, covering North American motorsport. My family are American, so I raced as well. So I thought, I got a pretty good, idea about what to do." And she went, "Fantastic. See you Saturday." So Saturday came, and I turned up, and she handed me a clipboard with the entry list, a ladder, and a microphone, and said, "There's the scoring tower. On top of the scoring tower, away you go."
Fantastic.
And so I said, "Well, good morning and welcome to Landau, everybody. This is round 3 of Stars of Tomorrow, and got a great day of racing. Let's get underway." And it went from there.
I managed to find a quote that it's interesting to hear your story because it's so similar to what mine was. You talk about how you and your mate bought the cart.
Yep.
Didn't last very long till you needed a second one. My first foray into karting, my brother-in-law and I bought a cart, and it lasted one night before we figured out, not that we wouldn't be able to share, but we both loved it so much. We tried to go heat to heat on the night. This isn't going to work. We both need to be out there, and we bought our second cart right away. So it was great. I saw
we
this.
started off racing. He would race one month, and I would race the next month.
Oh wow!
And that lasted exactly 1 month.
Take a look at this. Now this should pop up. Can you see that on your screen?
Nope.
Okay, it says I was enchanted, enraptured, instantly obsessed, and completely hooked. From that point on, racing in all its many forms has not just been a part of my life, it has been my life.
Yes.
Pulled that out of a story that you wrote, talking about how your parents started by playing the highlights of the U.S. Grand Prix. It was 1990.
1985.
Sorry, 85. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kiki Rosberg
Yep,
was the
Kepi
name that
won.
was mentioned. So
Yep, he won, and I remember, Philippe Alliot took out Martin Brundle in a big crash. Nigel Mansell crashed, but it was the color, it was the crash helmets, the colors of the cars.
yeah,
Because that year, you had the JPS Lotus, the Cannon Williams, obviously the Ferrari, but you had, the Marlboro McLaren, livery, the red and white. You had the factory Alfa Romeo team. You had Skull Bandit sponsoring the Ram team. It was just, as a 4-year-old, I just, my, I'm never sure if my parents actually regret doing that, because this has led me to a life of we've had a lot of fun. It's been a lot of adventures. I mean, some of the things, I mean, it's taken me round the world. If I had not found this passion for racing, or even if I hadn't have answered that phone at the circuit on that Tuesday morning, I may be a lot richer, but if financially, but
yeah.
what I try to say to my son is that, we are rich in the hearts and in our life experiences.
Without question.
And obviously I'm still trying to make my fame and fortune out of motorsport. You never know. There's
My
I'm
my
still
father-in-law
chasing
is
the
a
dream.
Yeah, my father-in-law is a drag racer, and he taught me early on the best way to make a small fortune
Is
is
start
to
with a large one.
start with a large one and get into racing. Yeah, I mean, it's you're still one of the very few that can actually make a living from motorsport in any capacity whatsoever. So, you're in less than 1% of anyone that gets into motorsport.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah. There are. I have to do it like a part-time second job, off and on, during the week. But at the moment, I am, yeah. My only source of income is motor racing, is karting. I did a little voiceover for a film that's being made about the 1989 Le Mans 24 Hours, last night, and there are other things that I've done bits of voice work, here and there, but it's really, motorsport is where my heart lies, my passion lies, where my talent, for want of a better word, lies. And I can
It's
just
not
see so many,
easy to
yeah, there's
to,
so many
to
opportunities there's things that I've got so many ideas and so many things and plans that, I mean, I'm a technological dinosaur. I don't know how technology works, recording equipment, which is a shame, because that sort of holds you back, a little bit. But there's so much about this sport in all its forms, from karting up to the very top, that hasn't been uh, fully realize its potential. Now we've got all these media channels. We've got so many different ways of, putting out content, quality content. If the industry can sustain, sustain it, I would very much like to see more people being able to earn a full-time living out of kart racing. Let's just karting. That's my goal, to try and help push that forward, so that in years to come, karting is a sustainable profession for a lot more people than it is now.
That would be great. At the same time, it would be, for me, it would be really great to see more people get involved in karting, even as,
Mm.
amateurs, and see more females, and kind of round out the numbers a little bit more, so we can get, more people. The wider we make the field, the wider we make the sport, the more people we can get to watch. So it all plays together.
Yeah, because I mean, okay, so I love what Lewis Hamilton is doing. The drive for diversity. If you if you take white men, white males, whatever age, out of karting, you know, what's left? There's so many critical positions with the running of the sport that would be impossible to fill if there were no white males. So we have to do a better job of encouraging uh, women, people of color, people of different religious backgrounds, people of different sexual orientation, even into the sport, to make it as inclusive as possible. And I keep saying it's going to be my dream one day to announce a race and come up and say to, Joe Smith, who's just finished fourth, how does it feel to be the leading male driver in fourth position?
Yeah.
Because, there are more, women, and they've succeeded. That would be, a dream for me, to see the sport I love being, the most inclusive and accessible it's possible to be for a sport that is, let's not beat around the bush. It's a money sport. It doesn't have to be a lot of money, but and there are ways to make it cheap, but it does cost money. So there's lots of work to be done there.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I joke a lot, and it's not even a joke. Some of the proudest moments that I've had, like in our club at home, what we call ourselves off camber carters, and we're made up
Mm-hmm.
of roughly 40 drivers, varying backgrounds, from young to, I'm not even the oldest at 50 anymore. But I get beaten by girls all the time. So one of our local drivers, Devin Gellings, she's progressed really well. She beats me on a regular basis now. In the olden days, we had someone named Whitney Stevenson. Whitney was our champion, and we actually made up shirts that said, I got beat by a girl, and we were really proud to wear them, because it was, she was a great driver, still is. She doesn't do the two-stroke stuff anymore. She races more four-stroke, but it was great to have those moments, but they're far and few between. We need, more and more and
Yeah.
more.
I mean, karting is one of the few, areas of motorsport. It's got a female world champion. Susie Ranieri back in the 60s. It's but we don't talk about that, and as much as we should. But yeah, I mean, I you talk about being accessible. When I started racing, in my own karts, it was 2000, well, 1999. Um, I was one of the youngest drivers on my particular grid. We raced a class called Senior Honda, which is two GX Honda 160 engines, four-stroke. It was the budget class, and we had a grid of 20. Myself and Cam, my teammate, we were amongst probably the youngest on the grid, but because the rest of the field were the dads and parents and uncles and older brothers or hobby karters in their 30s and 40s. Their kids raced, so we'll get a pro kart out and we'll race as well. And that, I don't want to lose the masters division at all. That would be a real shame. But even in the paddock, there were lots of people in my local circuit whose dads ran a car garage or an auto repair shop, and they were able to have a cart in the side of the garage, and as a privateer they were able to compete and go to national championship. They didn't have to win, but they could go and do it. It was aspirational. If now Even now, I don't think there are that many maybe self-employed auto repair mechanics who can afford to race, which is a real shame. We have to make sure that even at a very grassroots level, it's aspirational. And the karting that you see on YouTube, Scusa, Rotax, the CIK, IARMI, any of these big events, and there's got to be, when you see those events, you have, the sport has to be accessible. You've got to imagine there's one kid living on a farm in Oklahoma, and they've got a barn, and the kid goes, "Wow, Dad, that looks amazing. Can we try that?" And that driver has got to be able to compete. The sport can't preclude those people from competing.
Sure.
Because if you lose that, you lose the sport. As much as I love the technology, the big teams, the professionalism, the racing, at the top end, nothing beats it. But we have to ensure that it's accessible at a grassroots level, and that those once a month warriors, that they can, for example, they can race their local club,
Yeah.
every month, and then maybe once a year they can go to Supernats
Yeah.
and compete. They may not win, but they can compete. They can get on the grid and they can race against the superstars, without being, embarrassed. Obviously there's different levels, but they can compete.
Yeah.
That's, to me, extremely important. And that if I could change anything, I would make sure that we don't lose that.
Yeah, I mean, I from the first time I got in my cart, I had only ever done a club race until I want to say it was about 6 years ago. So I had only raced in our local club until we did, a buddy convinced me that we should go do a race down in Calgary. So for us, Calgary's only 3 hours away. It was another club race, but like that was so unbelievably uncomfortable to get out of our familiar area, have to load up, have to think about like our original track that I drove at was it was exceptional. Like we stored our
Right.
carts on site. It was called Stratatech. So it was basically like a super speedway. It was 1.6 kilometers and only had 9 corners.
Oh wow, that's yeah.
It was known through like very well throughout North America. We had a lot of people come up to the track because they just wanted to try it. But we had an on-site pro shop. We had a live-in mechanic. So we would finish on a Wednesday, roll our carts back in. Cole would
Yep.
would work on the cart while we were gone, and we could just roll it back out. So we didn't even really have to know a lot about our carts. But as I started doing, more and more of that, it's like, okay, wait a second. I learned a lot more by
Yeah.
having to go to this track I didn't know, have to learn the line and now I'm a big believer that if you're really going to develop as a driver, you have to get out of your comfort zone and you have to experience not just new tracks but be around unfamiliar drivers so that you have to kind of
Exactly.
experience, the different mentalities, the different ways of of,
Mhm.
of driving. But you
But
you have
it's the experience. I mean, it's adventure.
sure.
That is going to a new track for the first time, packing your cart up. I remember when we traveled around. It's the experience. It's the laughs you have. It's like
Yeah.
windshield time. I still laugh with my ex teammates about some of the things that we did on the way to these kart events. The racing was great. The banter, the experience, the camaraderie was fantastic. But it's driving up and down the country, especially if for a young family.
Yeah.
That's the bit that is almost, if not more valuable. The time you spend, with your kids, with family, whether it's good or bad, it's doing something together that is yeah, and traveling and racing is a great way to just yeah, some miles are good, some miles are bad. You get in the bus or the van at the end of a weekend and you've got a cart in many bits in the back and you've done nothing and it's like, I hate this sport. But then you drive home and it's just, it's more about the life experiences and the memories, with family and friends, that is almost as important as the racing.
But then you also get, a team or another group that'll pitch in and help out, and they'll see that
Yep.
you're struggling, or they'll see that,
Yeah.
you're missing a line. When I did the first challenge race down in the States, that was a big, it took, I think it was 28 hours for me to drive, tow my truck and trailer down. It was the first time I ever sat in a shifter cart. I'd never been in the cart in my entire life. I had no idea what I was doing. I got there. I didn't have a generator. I didn't have an air compressor. I didn't have a table. I didn't have a spare I had nothing. I had no
Yeah.
idea what I was doing after
Well,
racing for
there's
so long.
nothing's changed there then.
Thank you so
Sorry.
much. You're correct, but now at least I know that I need to line up with guys like
Yeah.
Ron White or whoever that can actually take care of me on a race weekend.
Well, and there's another. That's another. It's a good point. I'm not trying to blow smoke in your ass here, but of course, when I first met you, we were at the Rotax Winter Trophy,
Yeah.
and you were the fifth person on a grid of five against
Yeah.
four almost professional go-kart racers. But taking away that where you were, how far off the pace you started, I could see it instantly. This guy is a good person to have. You add something to every paddock that you're in, every grid. You do. You bring people together because you're having fun, and therefore people help you out, and you encourage people to help each other. And one of my things with commentary is I try to find people like that.
Mm.
Learn the stories, find the background, the families. To enhance the appeal of, say, look, this is a fun grid. and yeah, okay, I end up, to be making jokes, and there's
Fun.
a bit of Mickey taking, but it's all good natured. But the whole point is to try and promote the people that are in the sport just for fun, for the memories, to compete for that, the camaraderie and friendship, which can get lost at the very highest level when the
100%.
stakes are naturally so much higher. So
The,
there's always a method to my madness. I do what I pick on people like you.
well, yeah, I don't, I appreciate the kind words sincerely. I think the one thing that I really contributed, at least to rounds 1 and 2 last year, was
The barbell.
my
No?
my successful campaign to reduce the pre-final and the final from like 18 and 24 laps down to like 15 and 8, especially at the first track,
A
because
PK. Oh yeah,
it was
brutal.
so physical, and it was like, it was crazy. And the end of the day was like, listen, there's only a handful of us. The result isn't going to change in the last 5 laps. And, and once the guy, like, because in the beginning, okay, let's use some real numbers. I was 50 pounds heavier
Yep.
than those guys, and at least 30 years older than the next closest
Yeah.
competitor. Like, it
And
wasn't even close.
but you started the weekend, I think it was like 4.5 to 5 seconds off the back of the
Possibly.
other four.
Yeah.
But you ended the weekend like 3 seconds off the back.
At
And
PK,
then,
yeah.
yeah, a PK. And then the next round, you had said you within a week you'd lost a couple of pounds, and you focused on it, and you were like 2 seconds.
To be fair, I cheated at Orlando.
Oh,
And I don't mind saying that, because there was a spec gear that the series mandated.
yes.
And if I ran the spec gear, I was dead. There was no way that even those guys couldn't really make that gear run. I put in the gear that I wanted. Again, there's a fifth, like, even if I put nitrous, if I ran a shifter engine, I still wouldn't be able to keep up with these guys. So I wasn't going to take anything away from anyone. And if in the extremely unlikely event that I managed to, I wouldn't say podium, but if somehow there was a set of events where I ended up in the position to take that ticket, I would have walked away from it because my conscience wouldn't let me do it. I just wanted to embarrass myself a little bit less and
Yeah,
kind of keep up.
especially,
Like, when we got to Orlando, though, Orlando's a much less physical track than PK. It's it's only a handful of corners. I think on paper it says it's like 13, 14 corners, but really it's not that many.
yeah, no,
And
there's 13 on paper, but there's a couple that are, you just
it's
don't.
a kink. And when
Yeah,
you make that complex back towards the tech building, I think there's like 3 corners in there, but it's really one big sweeping corner. But
yeah,
notwithstanding, Esteban, if you're watching, I will do the same thing again. And even I said to the promoter, I'm like, what's the end result? He's like, if you end up in tech, you're going to get disqualified. I said, I don't care if I get disqualified, because I'm not here to win anything.
yeah, and
So,
you've had an enjoyable race, where you've
yeah.
been, more competitive. But see, I'm glad I was completely none the wiser, because there's me thinking that you'd up your game and that you were driving.
I did up my game. I
No,
did get a little bit better, but yeah, I mean, but that's the fun stuff. And getting to know, some of these other, because there's really strange things that can happen at a race depending on who you are and what you allow yourself to experience.
Yeah.
I've gone to races. I tend to be, and this, whether you believe this or not, I tend to be fairly introverted. I tend to be fairly withdrawn. Now, it's funny to say that, as I'm hosting a podcast and I do radio and all those other things. But when I'm in a strange situation, I tend to be withdrawn. But there's something about being at a go-kart race where it feels like it's okay to talk. Those are my people, and they're people I feel fairly comfortable with. There's always going to
I
be an
completely agree with you.
asshole, but getting back to PK, the people that we met and the people that we got to hang out with, like, really the one night that we had probably the most fun was, where we were camped. I'm only going to tell half of this story now because I want to save the other half for later. But where we were camped out, we ended up beside Xander and Trevor from Kart Chaser.
Kart Chaser, yeah.
Now, candidly, I didn't know who they were. I'd never heard of them before that night, but we spent a lot of time, hanging out and, kind of going around the track, and then brought him back to my motorhome, and, with the Taskinen boys, and John's really, really social. And, we fired up the barbecue, had a few drinks, told a few lies.
Yeah.
And then, that just connected us with a bunch of other people. And those are the things, like you were talking about. Some of it's windshield time, but it's these friendships and these connections that you wouldn't naturally make just out on the street, because we're all doing the same thing and we love the same stuff. And like that
Yeah.
for me is where it's at.
No, exactly. I've been, fortunate enough to meet some, some wonderful people, around the world. A lot of them I'm very fortunate enough to call my friends. I met some not so wonderful people as well, but that is just life. But yeah, and sometimes it's nice to just, so when I started commentating, I found a lot of doors were closed. And this is something that I've always wanted to make sure that I'm sort of training newcomers. I'm taking people in the wing, teaching the skills of the art form of commentating, and bringing people through. Because it wasn't until I met my mentor, Ken Walker, in 2009, that any other commentator sort of gave me a chance to work with them, to learn, and to actively promote me and push me towards other jobs. um and it was, one of the best memories is that we went to Sarno after Ken retired. We were at Sarno, and him and his wife Jill, they came along, and we were able to go out to Pompeii, and we just took a car drive, and we were spent away from the kart track and had a meal, just talking as friends. It wasn't about racing, and there's people in the sport that, yeah, you see them the majority of the time at kart tracks, but then, when you do get a little bit of downtime, certainly you realize, oh, do you know what, we would be friends in real life, because we genuinely, get on.
Yeah.
And that's really nice. That's really nice.
Yeah, and that's really cool how, racing, karting, and it doesn't matter if it's karting, what we do on the professional side of
Mhm.
things, you have those opportunities. It just tends to, it seems like it tends to just get more serious, where that, when the helmet goes on, all of a sudden we feel like we have to hate each other, instead of just understanding that we're just fighting for a piece of real estate. And at
Yeah,
the end,
yeah,
it's going to last for 15-20 minutes, and then we move on. And hopefully we can, have a drink at the end of the night. And, if we made a mistake, hopefully we can say sorry, and that's it.
yeah, exactly,
Um,
exactly.
Now, I want to change gears a little bit. You had mentioned a couple of things. You were talking about Miami. You were talking about, some of the other, SCUSA series.
Mhm.
Um, Obviously, a few years ago now, and if you're uncomfortable with this, or you want to stay away from it, that's
No,
fine.
no,
I
no,
didn't
no,
prep
no.
you with this, but Rotax was a very dominant force in North America. Released the Evo package. I think we can say and safely agree that it wasn't necessarily handled the best way.
There
Which
was there was maybe a timing issue, and a personnel issue, and
And then a
a
support
supply
issue.
issue, and a general audience customer issue.
Right, which it seems like that happens in karting, though, that, or at least maybe it's more of a North American thing, where everyone's on board with something, and then they kind of burn that down, and then they go somewhere else, and then there's an issue with that. But I want to kind of address the Rotax thing, because I'm a big Rotax believer. I love the product. Again, we're part of the largest DD2 club in the entire world. We've got over 40 registered drivers. We put up to 30 carts on a track on a Wednesday night. Um, and we know that, we put this engine on, it's going to run for a full season, at least of club racing. We don't tear them apart. We don't have to put parts into the thing. They're very dependable. But you also have the opportunity to cover, like you said, Miami, did some, was it, I pardon my confusion, I can't remember if you did the Rock Vegas, or if I'm thinking of the SCUSA event recently.
I did the Scooser event. I did
Right?
Supernats. I did work for. So, I've worked for every major karting promoter, engine manufacturer, series in the world, over my career. I'm on good terms with nearly all of them, even the ones that have sacked me. um, but yeah, the Rotax. So this is when I started doing the Grand Finals in 2014. It was the year after the Rotax Grand Finals were in New Orleans. That was organised by Richard Beauclair, the Max Speed Group.
Okay.
And the first few years of doing the Grand Finals, I got on. Richard's a great guy. He used to do the Mojo tire changing contest, and the American team, Team USA, they were together. He was like the ringleader, the ringleader, the circus, leader. Everyone was like, right, okay, so and so's in this race. We're all going to go out and watch them. And there was, the Americans had a huge presence at the Grand Finals. And then 2016 at Sarno, suddenly halfway through the event, Richard goes, right, Henry, I'm off now. You're doing the Mojo contest. Goodbye. And there had been some falling out, some parting of the ways, whether it was over the Evo package, whether it was over tires, whether it was a disagreement between the way Rotax wanted to do things and the way that he felt the American market needed to be. Whatever the result, it left a lot of people in the US high and dry, without a promoter, without equipment. They just spent a lot of money on updated parts, and it went very badly wrong. And years, even though we are here, 5, 6, 7 years later, Rotax as a product is still recovering step by step. But I've learned in karting over the years that people, it's like very ebbs and flows,
very cyclical.
2, 3, 4, 4, 5 years ago in the UK, there were 90 IARMI X30 drivers in junior and senior in each class, and there were 30 in Rotax. Last year, there were 30 in all the IARMI classes and 90 in all the Rotax classes. Somebody will bring out a new tire they don't like, or the cost of, there'll be a piston update, or there'll be something. And I think that engine manufacturers like Rotax, like IARMI, like Rock, obviously the teams are extremely talented and they're very intelligent, and they always find a way to, I won't say cheat, that's not the right word, but you have a rule book, and the job of an engineer or a mechanic is to look at the rule book and then try to, like Mark Donoghue said, the unfair advantage, to work what's not in the rules that I could do that's not breaking the rules, but that will give me that advantage.
You don't want to get to the black, but you want to work into the gray and edge on the dark gray. Yep.
And I think that is not necessarily a bad thing. Nope. I think that encourages, it encourages engineering, skill, thinking along those lines. We want to have some people in karting to go on to be Formula One engineers and car designers, the next Adrian Newey's, of the world. And I think some of the changes that are made in karting are reactionary to the teams being ahead of the rule makers and the technical capabilities of some of the championships to police the issues.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. What my real question is what do you think Rotax has to do to start recovering? Like anytime, I like I said, I'll talk about the challenge races that I did, or I could look at any of the other series that we've been part of. But if I mention that I do this Rotax DD2 thing, the first thing people want to talk about is wiring harnesses catching on fire. It's like, okay, well, that was almost 10 years ago. Like it was 8 for sure. We never saw that in Canada because, maybe we're running at slightly cooler temperatures, but what do you think Rotax has to do to start clawing their way back, at least to kind of get back to parity with some of the other series?
Well,
we got a temporary glitch in the matrix here with Henry. We did a little test call yesterday, so I know that this won't last for long, and we'll get Henry back here right away. At least he's paused in a fairly thoughtful position here. hopefully Henry drops can log back in here. That's a shame because obviously you want to hear what he has to say. I'm sure Henry will jump back on here once he resets and reconnects. We've got a really nice crowd tonight watching. Thank you very much. We're going to have a few moments at the end. If you want to ask a question, make a comment, feel free. Henry has had the chance of, again, seeing a lot of drivers come up through the ranks. He gets to see how these other series operate. There is no perfect series. There is no ultimate engine package. I really want to get in and dig a little deeper with him to get his insight to what what he thinks the magic formula is, because realistically it's not good for any one series, any one engine package to get too big, because then like he was talking about with the competition side of things, to have innovation, to have somebody who can kind of push that envelope, it spurs more development, and it helps make everything better. And just like, within the tech world, if one series gets to be too big, then it makes it really hard for anybody else to claw in. I think they need to be more even, and there needs to be a bit of parity. I'm just going to send Henry a quick note to find out if he's able to jump back on. I got this great. So, I don't know if we'll get Henry back here, but last year he got to make, kind of my, my ultimate highlight, when he asked me to join him in the booth in Bahrain. I'll have this for the rest of my life, but this was one of the coolest things that ever got to happen to me in racing.
There is the results. Palacio, McAndrew, Urin, Spencer, Yostius, Rivera and Keller. There's a bit of pushing going on behind, and I think as Kinsman and Dennis Toome tried to sort of like get the racing line, they both got forced wide, and that caused people to back off, and then that chain reaction. What it does mean, hover,
welcome back. I jumped a little further ahead in the playbook where I was talking about how you got to help make one of my ultimate, sincerely, one of the coolest things that I've ever had in my life was getting to join you last year in the booth in Bahrain to do the DD2 Masters pre-final. We can get back to that, but we were just jumping into what you think Rotax needs to do to kind of gain some footing. And while you were gone, I said I believe to me it's vitally important that the series and the manufacturers have more level distribution, that we can't have one that's so high and the other's low. I think karting will be the very best if we can get not exact proportions that everyone has a third, but that we can see some decent split. So
well, yeah, I mean Rotax want to have a standard way of running their events, technical rules, paddock rules across the world, so that you can go to any Rotax event and it is the same specification, same regulations, same rules, and which is a good thing. However, they're like the North American market there's a slightly different way of doing things, certain things, and there's going to be a bit of pushback. What needs to happen is that whether it's an RTX group, a Grid 14 promoted event or a J3 promoted event in the USA, the regulations got to be the same, down to the very small minutiae, which is what caught us out at the first weekend of the Winter Trophy this year, when suddenly you jump from 120 drivers to 250 odd.
Yeah.
and all the big teams are there. And so you've got Rotax saying, well, these are the rules. You got the promoters saying, these are what the customer expects, and this is what we've planned for. And putting on an international karting event is very, very difficult. It takes an inordinate amount of planning, staff, technology, rules, regulations, time, money, that people don't realize. It also has, the facilities, you're packing in so many people, and, everyone needs internet and, live streaming, all these things that, it's not the work of a moment. And I just think that maybe the first round, it was great to have all the drivers there, but it needed a sort of step back and say, okay, well, look, we're a little bit underprepared here. This is what the Rotax expect, and this is what the customers expect. And so let's try and meet in the middle. But what the idea is that all those drivers that race the winter trophy, when they go to the J3 promoted East Trophy and West Trophy races and the US Nationals, and J3 do a fantastic job of implementing that European style of racing, of Rotax racing. Every tiny little technical detail needs to be the same.
Yep.
For example, Harley Keeble got excluded from DD2, I believe, in this last round of the Winter Trophy because he had his tires on the wrong way round.
Yeah.
The rotational arrow.
Yeah.
Now, Harley was like, damn, there we are. No, he didn't complain about it. It was like, shoot, that's tough. And everyone else was up in arms. How can you exclude somebody from that? And Harley knows that in Europe and the UK, that's the rules. And, it's an exclusion, and it's a silly mistake, and it doesn't gain you any advantage or anything like that, but it's a rule. And everyone in the States was like, that's ridiculous. How can you exclude something? I said, well, it's a rule.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you had a situation last year where, Lucas Palacio won a Rotax Grand Final, world title, and was excluded because, somebody has read, well, these are the rules in the States. They're not the rules of the Grand Finals. And, it got so. I believe what Rotax are trying to implement, it will help the USA, North American karting, the way they're trying to do things. But there are also some things that, Rotax and the Europeans can learn about the American way of doing things. Because, not everything works in Europe, or not everything in Europe, and this is not just this is across the board, is conducive to a happy, fun, vibrant, show.
Yeah.
And but then not everything in North America is quite, maybe behind the scenes tech wise, scrutineering wise. You haven't got the equipment and the ability to, the Rotax US Nationals last year, there were people couldn't believe it. It's like, we've been in tech for 45 minutes. Yep, you have. Like, what's going on? Well, that's tech. In Europe, in other countries, you're used to that. But so there's the two parties could learn from each other.
Yeah, there's a happy medium.
There's a happy medium, yes.
And I got we were in Italy last fall. We went over for a CRG event. It was in rental carts, but we got to spend a day on a test day leading up to an event at South Garda, and just being there, we got to, be inside CRG's factory tent. Couldn't really get inside anybody else's. I wasn't there to snoop, but I love seeing how the teams operate and seeing how, everything happens. It was miserably cold. I mean, it was like 6 Celsius. It was raining. And man, these guys were just going out. Like, it was time to go. They go out, they come back in. Like, they're kind of like little soldiers. They just do and this was for practice. This is just a test day. This isn't a race where everything counts. It was great to finally see that track, in person. I've been to Sarno. I'm looking forward, hopefully, going back this year.
Yeah, and
But
if you are there, then of course the option to join me for a race or two in the box is, and that's again, I asked you to do it because I thought, number one, you'd be good. Number two, you can add. I've never driven a DD2, so you can add this perspective that I can't. And number three, it's a global event. I want to have voices from all over the world. At any big event that I do,
yeah,
if I'm the only commentator, then I make it my job to have guest commentators, start people off. I used to do it in the UK a long time ago, where if there was a cadet who hadn't made the A final, who was a good little talker, I kept bringing him up and he have a little practice at commentating.
yeah.
Just because, yeah, why not get the kids to learn, the media skills. I walk prance around the paddock, in all sorts of the grand final glasses, Viking hats, stuff, out, in any paddock, I'm joking and laughing, and that's a part of my personality. But yeah,
Like
but
this guy.
yeah, like that guy there. But generally, I want the kids, especially young kids, to relax around the microphone.
Yeah.
And if they're busy laughing and joking with me, they forget that I'm holding a microphone, and they just think, oh, it's only Henry, let's have a chat with Henry.
Yeah.
And therefore they get more relaxed around the microphone. And so when it matters more or later in their careers, they're naturally more comfortable.
Well, two thoughts. Getting back to the hit that we did during the pre-final for DD2, I don't know that I could add an awful lot other than watching these guys and be like, damn, these guys are good. Because even the guy who was racing in 25th, the spread from front to back, like so much of that event comes down to luck. And it comes down to whether you had an issue with your fuel pump, whether you had, a bad start where everyone just happened to jam up, but they're all unbelievable drivers. But, getting to the kids, you've got a really great skill of not just, you don't ask the yes or no question because that's all a kid is really programmed to do. You don't say, hey, Johnny, did you have fun out there today? Because the kid's going to go, yeah. And
Yeah,
then we're hanging. It's, you're really good at asking the question that promotes a proper answer. Is like, what was the most fun thing you did out there today? Where the kid's going to kind of talk. And then, you guys and specifically the kart chaser side, really good at at the end, like, who do you want to thank? Well, my crew, my mom and dad, and blah, 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 blah. Like then it gets back to the stock thing, but the featurettes that you do in the garage, I love. And the way that, I got to stand there in Orlando when all the presentations were done last year and just kind of watched how you'd prep a kid before you would start recording. You had the benefit of being able to do second takes if you needed to. I really appreciated the time and the care, especially for the little kids that you gave.
Well, thank you. My viewpoint of it is that we live in an age where everything is recorded and it's there forever on YouTube. And number one, I want the kids to be confident. I want the kids to be able to think about creating a brand, and there's so many drivers that I've seen that are amazingly talented that have fallen by the wayside through a lack of budget. But so I want to try and think of, okay, people invest in people. If you're a business and you want to put in, say, $1,000 into a kart racer, you can pick any one of hundreds of talented drivers, but you'll generally look at the one who's going to represent my company, who's represent my brand, who deserves it, who's got the best backstory, who's the nicest, most polite, kid. So I want to try and get them to be the best version of themselves, to learn about the business side of things, but also to give them and their families, some nice memories to look back on, in years to come, when they're not racing anymore, when, they've got their own families, they can look back and say, oh, look, this is me when I was a kid, and this is what I did. And there's a nice bit of fun element there, where they're not robots. Because when you put the crash helmet on, every driver looks the same, apart from what colour the race suit and the go-kart and the crash helmet is when you take the crash helmets off and you get the personalities, the families, you know, the stories behind the drivers, that I try to, which I think adds to the broadcast. I think it adds to the interest. It, you know, if there's somebody watching karting that's not in, you know, directly related to any driver per se, but they hear, oh, this driver's from just down the road from me, and you know, oh, they've got a, you know, the parents, you know, they do this, and the mum's the mechanic instead of the dad, and what have you. Oh, I'll follow that driver, I'll invest, and I'll be a supporter, and you know, it builds.
And that's what it takes is,
yeah,
you know, whether it's professional racing, you know, that's the thing that kills me about professional broadcasts is that they don't showcase the drivers. Like, we need to learn who these guys are, who these drivers are outside the car, so we understand a little bit more of how they maybe act when they're inside the car. But, you know, you covered that so well. I want to get to a couple more before, you know, I've kept you very long and I don't want you falling asleep on me here, but
no, that's okay.
Couple of things just because I want to get your opinion, and these are kind of
quick fire stuff. Yeah.
Well, quick fire more. Who was the one driver that you saw at an early age that you knew was going to make it?
Lando Norris.
Okay.
I saw him go 2009. He was a cadet at a place called Kimbolton, first round of Formula Kart Stars. He started in the C final, won the C final, started the back of the grid for the B final, drove through the field, won the B final, got on the back of the grid at the A final, and he had just turned 8. You know, the kart then didn't start in the A final, but it was, you know, and it was wet. He was tiny, so he was one driver for definite that I thought, yeah, that Oliver Rowland as well, who won the first ever race I commentated on. He went round the outside of Jack Harvey at the final corner of Landau to win a Jika race. And then there's been other drivers that I've Alex Albon, Jake Dennis, Ben Barnicoat, George Russell, they all did, and Richard Verschoor, they all did things that I saw that for me marked them out as very, very special when they were very young.
It was interesting as I was doing as much research as I could in a really short amount of time. On your YouTube page is a video from decades ago that featured Lewis Hamilton with Alex Lloyd and Martin Plowman. And I can't remember the exact scenario, but you know, I think the reason you threw it up there is because Hamilton had to start at the back in the final.
Yeah, and I think he came to the Buckmore Park, possibly Junior Yamaha, and you know,
up to third. But it was really interesting because Alex Lloyd obviously made it to IndyCar, as did Martin Plowman. Now, I won't say I know Martin really well, but I got to know him a little bit. He was a teammate of Alex's for a period of time at, oh boy, I can't remember what the team was now, but great guy. Still chat with him once in a while on iRacing. Who is someone that you were sure was going to make it, but either ran out of funding or, you know, just ran out of talent at some point, or just buckled under the pressure? That's maybe an unfair way to put it, but you know, someone that you thought would, but you know, circumstances didn't allow for it.
Well, I mean, I don't want to say ones that buckled under pressure or got found out. There are lots of drivers who I would have made money. So if I just focus on money, so there's a couple. First of all, my teammate Craig Camilleri, I stand by the fact that he's one of those annoying people that is just so talented. They get in and they're quick in anything.
Okay.
I've seen him drive away from in British University Karting Championship. He drove away from a bunch of single-seater drivers, spun, got overtaken by them, and then went past them all again. And he is the best driver coach I have ever worked with. We work in the Bahamas. I run the Bahamas national go-karting team, and you know, we went to the FI Motorsport Games, and Cam coached those kids who had never seen a kart circuit before to the fact that our team captain Amanda was 1.6 seconds off the fastest lap of the race in his first time ever on a kart circuit. And that was just Cam coaching him. There's a kid called Macaulay Austin, who he's still in the sport. He's now back mechanicking in the UK and in the USA, who was an independent driver, privateer driver, did incredible things, could make the kart dance. There's a lad called Alex Gill, who now works for George Gibbons Motorsport in the UAE. He ran a right chassis, and I'll never forget the European KF3 championship at PF International, walking out onto the grid for the final. I think it was like the 8th row of the grid. Inside of row number 8 was Alex Gill, him and his dad in like a grotty caravan with, jeans, t-shirts, Alex V mechanicking. They were starting 15th, and starting 16th was Lance Stroll. And it was just so much talent, but never gonna get anywhere. There's a lad called Harry Thompson who was selected alongside Oliver Behrman as 2 drivers to go on a young talent program. And it was, Johnny Edgar was another one. And Harry Thompson, for whatever reason, sadly, he's no longer in the sport. And, whether it was focus, whether it was, I don't know. But that was a real shame to lose Harry to the sport.
Do you ever get the chance to get back in a kart? At these events, teams, say, hey, listen, Henry, listen, you were talking about it. Why don't you take my kart out for a drive or during a test or a practice day? Does that opportunity ever come up?
No. So, the last time I raced was 2008. I retired at the end of the Le Mans 24 Hours in 2008. We finished 12th as an independent team. I then put on about 50 pounds, had a family.
All muscle.
I at the end of 2022, Rotax asked me to test drive one of the E20 senior karts and talk about it. So they mic'd me up, and it was the first time I'd sat in a kart. I've done some demonstration races in the Bahamas. I've done some stuff for the Prime Minister over there. On the street racing, things like that. But I was always happy with the fact I'm done with racing. It took me to the end of the pit lane in one of those E20s to realize, oh my God, how much did I miss this?
Yeah.
So I'm currently just over halfway through losing that 50 pounds. And myself and Cam have decided that we're going to do one more race. And we're targeting next year's 4-stroke or 4-cycle US Grand National Finals at Newcastle Motorsport Park. I'm going to go in the veterans class or the senior, the masters. Cam can do what he wants because he's a year older than me, but he's like a whippet. So, but yeah, so I don't get a chance to drive as many karts as I would like to, but the itch is still there now, thanks to Rotax.
So if someone gave you an opportunity, obviously world of difference between a 4-stroke, the E20, and a 2-stroke, would you take it?
Absolutely. If somebody said, right, Henry, here's a kart, here's the seat that fits you, go out, test it, see what you think. Let's, I would absolutely, bite their hand off to just try and not to see how quick I could be, but to make, obviously I want to be quick. But my main focus would be how can this make my commentary better? The understanding, the more in-depth understanding, to make my commentary better.
When you got to feel that G-force going through, or jumping over the curb and landing with that, more geriatric frame than some of these kids have.
But for me, it was the rolling lap. I used to. When I stopped racing and started commentating, I was okay with not racing, but the rolling lap, I loved the rolling lap as a driver. Planning, annoying the driver in front of you, behind you, alongside you, getting in their heads, trying to get that unfair advantage that, maybe if I wasn't quite as quick as them over a lap, I would find a way of getting ahead by, hook or by crook.
Any way it takes. I wanted to get back to something we talked about earlier. Hopefully you can see this picture once it loads up here.
Oh yeah.
So we were talking about PK. For people who didn't know, that was you interviewing, and you've got to interview a number of times, Rubens Barrichello. That first year that we were at PK, the first event of the Florida Winter Trophy, we parked right beside them. And, I won't say that I know Mr. Barrichello, but, had number of interactions at those races, then at the grand finals, because his kids race. He qualified to race didn't race he did race last year, but not the year before. I can't remember.
Oh, he's raced the last 2 years.
But
He's
how
qualified
cool is
3
that
times.
to get to put a microphone and, and I'll let you tell the story, because what, a lot of the time when you get to see these guys on TV and they, a guy like, I'm not going to make a judgment at all, but I don't know Daniel Ricciardo at all, but anyone that's that happy on the camera, you kind of get the feeling that you might be a bit of an asshole in certain situations. But to get to see, and I'm not saying that, I'm just saying that your head doesn't know if they're as nice as what you see. But Mr. Barrichello is easily one of the nicest, happiest guys that's in the entire paddock.
Yeah, unless you happen to have an altercation with him on the circuit, in which case the ultra competitiveness comes straight back.
Did that ever
Daniel
present
Ricciardo,
itself
for example,
2 weeks or 3, whatever it was, at the Orlando track a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, there was a few little dust ups, but I mean, Daniel Ricciardo, for example, is a really nice guy. I've been so lucky to interview,
I would hope he is.
Oh yeah, no. So I commentated for a championship called the Daniel Ricciardo series, and he came along and we did an interview together. And I tried to give him about how do the kids, Daniel, get over a bad result on Sunday? If how do they not carry it with them? And he just looked around and went, go into school on Monday morning and punch the fat kid in your class. That'll make you feel better. Lewis Hamilton was so great at talking. I interviewed him, and it was, as long as I talked about karting, and him and the kids and memories, he was fine. The minute you give him like a Formula One style question, you could see that the autopilot comes on.
Yeah,
so
for the millionth time.
Yeah, so I find that with Rubens, and I'm good friends with him. We speak off track in a way. That event, the first time I met him, I interviewed him maybe 2 times, and I would walk past him more, and because I'm moving on to the next guy, because he's no more important than say Colin Livingston in that event. You're all there, whether every event I do, whether there's 500 drivers or 50 drivers, I try to make every single one feel as important as the other. There's you're not going to get the same amount of camera time, but if I can do the same amount of research and if I on every driver, so that when they get their 15 seconds, it's meaningful. That's the point. And I think that's maybe why I picked it off him, is because the amount of times I just walk past him with a microphone and I'm interviewing other drivers, and I'm not, you've got nothing to add right now. I want to go and speak to this guy from Taiwan. Because he's written his cart off, and that's more important. That, and I was able to give him the badge of his Stuart Ford that I collected from the track from Spa in 1998. I picked up the badge off his car from the side of the track after a massive accident and kept it, and I was able to present it back to him in 2022 with his son Eduardo, and we're just sporting dads. We talk more about our kids. My son plays basketball for Wales. His Fernando and Eduardo obviously are very successful. We just talk about being a dad.
That's cool.
and dogs because he's got a great a lush retriever. So but that's the thing. It's like oh, how's it going? Racing. How are the kids? How's the dog? That type of thing.
How much prep do you actually do for the events? Because I think most people don't appreciate how much time it takes to start familiarizing yourself with names, teams, where they're from, et cetera, et cetera.
I sometimes think I don't do enough prep, but everyone else seems to think I do way more than everybody else. Over time, I've sort of distilled it down to, I work on pen and paper, and so I try to make sure that I've got every driver, their hometown, their age, team, chassis, results, the career highlights, you know, a couple of sponsors, and some results that I could quickly refer to, you know, on you know, my entry lists. Because yeah, you know, if there's a boring race, then you need other things to talk about. But also, I want to know, you know, the person who's 36th and last, they've worked just as hard to get to this event, and you know, for whatever means they have,
Yep.
they deserve as much of my time as, yeah, the Callum Bradshaws of the world, the Joe Turneys, the Marin Kremers, you know, the Rubens Barrichellos. They're, to me, they're just as important, you know. And I try to, yeah, make sure I go around the pits, I go around the paddock, I speak to everybody just to say hiya. How's it going? Oh, we've got a new crash helmet. Oh, that's a nice little, you know, what does that mean? Why have you got Super Mario on your, oh, is that because that's your favorite computer game? Okay, I'll remember that, you know. Just, it goes back to, yeah, characters, and, you know, making everybody who turns up at a paddock feel wanted, valued, feel part of the show, you know, feel as important, you know, whether they're first or last.
No, and you do a great job with that. Now, these are my favorite question. This is how I typically wrap things up. What's a misconception that you get about yourself or your profession that you want to clear up?
That it's easy, that anyone can do it, and that misconception about myself, that I'm, like you said, like I'm away from a kart track, I'm not necessarily as outgoing and as bubbly as I am there, because it's my world. It's my world. So I think, and a misconception is that it's easy to put on really good quality broadcasts. It takes so much equipment and planning and, you know, professionalism, to do, and it's easy just to sit and talk about a race, because I think it's a bit of an art form.
You know, having my 8 minutes, and that's the only regret I have about that experience we did in Bahrain, is that I never got a picture. I wanted to have a picture beside you in the booth, you know, kind of from my perspective. But once, you know, because we didn't plan anything, we didn't talk about anything. It's just like shuttle in, sit down.
Yeah,
you were in the middle of
dealing
dealing with.
Colin, get down here.
Yeah, you were dealing with a producer in your ear. We kind of had a bit of a script that we were going to go to, and it never happened because there was an issue, and then there was an interview, and then it was like, we're right in the middle of it, and then it was over. It was,
but that's the good thing. You know, that's live. You know, I love live is great. You know, it sends your senses tingling, because, you know, you've got to do a good job, and there's nervous energy. But when when you're when you're on the top of your game, or you have belief in yourself, then things just flow.
I was thankful because it was over as quick. Like, didn't have any time to kind of get nervous, didn't have any time to really think. But sitting back and you know, really wrapping my head around sitting there for 6 hours, 8 hours, doing heat after heat after heat after, you know, class after class after class. And I mean, you know, you made a comment a few times, especially as we got towards the, like, your voice was gone.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a pounding, because I mean, I don't just do the commentary. I do lots of other things at the Rotax event. I think my step counter, in 10 days at the Rotax Grand Finals, I walked 123 miles.
I believe
just doing all the things there, you know. But if you're passionate about it, then it's no problem at all. It's my passion, it's my love.
Last thing I'll throw is, you know, you just have to remember, when you're doing the tire changing contest, let the mic and the amp do the job. You don't have to yell over top of the mic and the.
Oh, I know.
Especially at the end of the weekend when you got no voice anyway.
Oh yeah, doing the I try, and, but again, that's having a bit of fun, and you know, I've got to work on maybe a bit of that, but just try and get the crowd involved,
convey that excitement. Yeah, I've got another 20 questions here, so hopefully at some point we'll be able to do this again. I don't want to keep you any longer. I know it's very late, and I appreciate your time. This is easily the largest crowd that I've ever had watching, so thank you so much, Henry.
Oh no, thank you very much. It's a pleasure. I'd love to come back anytime and chat with you, mate.
Is there anything you want to throw at us? Is there any other, thought or,
Well, I mean, what I currently, I believe what SCUSA are doing with the pro show is a really, really positive step. And I
I like
Xander
that a
Clements
lot.
and Kart Chaser, I think that could be, they deserve an awful lot of credit. I just, I want people to go and explore and try and get into karting. And, I think that, if there's a way to make it easier to get in to karting and more affordable for more people to do it, then that's better. I would just say, when you finish driving, don't give up on the sport. You loved it at one point.
Yep.
That's why you started sat in a go-kart. So even if the dream ends and you're not going to be a professional driver, there's so many areas in the sport that you can still work in. Then that is what I would do.
Somebody's got to be at the back, and for the most part, especially at these big events, I'm happy to watch the backside of these guys drive away.
The people at the back. Without the people at the back, you've got no sport.
Yep. No, I agree. Henry, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. This was fantastic. Hopefully everyone enjoyed, hearing your story, your passion for karting. Thank you for what you do for our sport. Like I said, when we had our test call yesterday, I'm a firm believer, once you get into this sport, you have to adopt the role of ambassador, and we need to be, promoting, we need to be bringing in the next club racers. The club racers become the next, national event people, become the sponsored drivers, become the next professional. So it all starts somewhere. That doesn't need to be your end goal, but until we get more people, filling the spots for, geriatrics like you and me, our sport's gonna, have it's going to struggle to continue.
Well, I think that there's enough people doing enough correct things in karting as the moment that means I think that we're in pretty good hands at the moment. There's always a lot to do. Never rest on your laurels.
Amen. Well, I was in the gym yesterday. I've got to fly tomorrow, so there won't be any gym. But even while I'm away, I have to be prepping those that shifter cart.
It's gonna beat you up.
It's a violent bitch. So looking forward to getting back into it here in a couple of weeks. Henry, once again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you at whatever the next event is. And we need to get you up to Canada here sooner than later for, our home track, like Steve Hammond pointed out, our home track is actually Rotax Mojo Raceway.
I keep sort of dropping hints to Blake Choker, to Scott Campbell, and Michelle Beauclair, saying, what are the chances of getting me out to Canada? Well, we'll see. I would love to.
I can get you here. That's not a problem. It's all the rest of it that we need. Crews and cameras and equipment. But we've also. Sorry, go ahead.
Even if it's just doing circuit commentary, that's how I started. And circuit commentary. I get occasionally I get a chance to do an event that's not streamed, and I love having the crowd or everyone in the paddock sort of not at my mercy, but you can work the crowd. You can make it so inclusive, because especially if you're standing amongst the people,
you're the only game in town.
Yeah, and again, it's a chance to put smiles on people's faces. Karting's fun. It's a great sport. It's a sport in its own right, but it's fun. And it's got to remain fun. And I'm all about promoting the fun side of it as much as anything else.
First and foremost, I mean, if you talk to Alex, any post race, the thing that we always fall back on is not really like, if we win a race, it's great. But we always talk about, hanging out in the motorhome, watching a movie at the end of the night, doing the barbecue, sneaking during the Toronto Indy, sneaking into Andretti's tent and stealing their ice cream. And then the next day having Alex's daughter tell Rob Edwards that we did it. Like, those are the things that we like. Nobody really remembers so much about what happens on track, but it's all the rest of it.
Again, fun memories. Long may they continue. Thank you very much.
Hope to see you soon, my man.
No, see you soon as well. Good luck. Have fun overseas, and I'll catch up with you very soon. And thank you to everyone for watching.
You bet. Thanks, Henry.
Say that.
Oh, what a great dude. For people who don't know, again, what Henry's saying is it's not flippant. It's not, hollow. He spends time going through the paddock, going to, literally every driver, every team, and gets to pick up on these stories and gets to find out who everyone is, and makes a point. And, highly encourage you, whether it's this year's Rotax Grand Final or any of the other, kart chaser events, or wherever Henry or any of the other broadcasters are going, the quality of the production that they're doing is professional level. It's, obviously it's not as fancy a cameras, not as many people, but they do such a great job covering multiple angles and really, bringing you into the events. But man, oh man, thank you very much. We had almost 100 people watching just on YouTube. Thank you very, very much. As always, you're welcome to send comments, questions. You can always get me, Colin@cantork.com. My handle here, CL_87. You're more than welcome to send me, story ideas, comments, and we'll be off next week because I'll be overseas, but we'll catch you here in a couple more weeks.